what is the thing that keeps you up at night? Like, what is stressing you out at night from a work standpoint that you're constantly trying to solve?
I have a common pattern of overcommitting myself, saying yes to a lot of stuff, saying I can get it done sooner than I think I will be able to do. You know that saying, you always overestimate what you can do in a day? Every day feels like that for me.
Yeah.
And that means that I'm kind of always playing catch up. And it's part of the reason why I hired someone. And I'm trying to find ways and systems to get me caught up on that. But it's really hard to sit there at 10 o'clock at night, even if I'm tired, and think I could be doing this right now. And when it's just you working for yourself, it really is. It just comes down to you. So stretching myself too thin, saying yes to too much stuff, or even trying to over deliver, and in the process, I almost sometimes over promise and under-deliver by trying to over deliver. I want to be able to say I'm going to do all this for you because I really want to make this work, and then I fall behind. And that's an ongoing challenge that I've had to deal with in several different elements, whether it's balancing travel, because I always assume that I'm going to have downtime when I'm at a conference to get something done, but I never do because there's always something pulling me away. And then, or even it's just me sat at my desk and I just underestimate how long it might take to edit video or build a list of people to cold call, which I'm about to do right after this. And I've literally spent the last 20 minutes like speed importing contacts into my CRM so I can make sure I actually have people all listed up to dial. But that's a lot of my life playing catch up. And I think it's always been a bit like that. It's ADHD to a certain extent, but it's also part of like, but part of, I don't know, I do want to do well. I think I just sometimes think too much can mean not doing as well. And so I have to figure that balance a bit more.
Yeah, I very much know exactly what you mean from a like tactical standpoint. Next week, our go-to-market leadership, we are all meeting together in Philadelphia to, talk about H2. And my best laid plans right now is I am planning to edit these podcasts in my downtime, of which I know I will actually have none. So I very much feel you there. And it's a constant struggle for me too. I am, in fact, my boss, Ting Ting, our VP of marketing here, implores me to try and say no more often. It's a struggle for me too. So how, you mentioned hiring someone. Are there ways that you personally are successfully overcoming this, or is it something that it's still very much a work in progress?
I think knowing where my time is actually valuably spent, so the reason I've hired someone is because I realized almost half my time right now was spent editing videos. And I love editing videos. I love that creative stuff. It feels satisfying for me to take something from not finished to finish. It's a satisfying process for me. But realistically, at my pay grade, if I was a video editor, I'd be the best paid video editor probably on the planet, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense for me to do that. And that's why I then looked into investing and bringing someone in for support on that. And before I had them, I started turning to freelancers, etc. So I think it's a case of figuring out what a low value task is and trying to find ways to delegate that or make it easier with tech or tools. There are so many tools out there that can make you more efficient. For example, to your point, I edit the 30 Minutes to President's Club podcast every week. There's 2 episodes a week. I found some really great AI tools that help me cut up the clips and have active speakers. And that saved me 3 hours on the edit on that, because that's one of the things I don't want to let go of, because I know it means so much to them to have a really high quality podcast production, because they're one of the biggest ones in sales. And I don't feel safe yet. Maybe one day when I get my new hire to that point, I don't feel safe yet letting go of that one. So knowing where to let go, and then when I don't let go, finding ways to make sure that's efficient. Time blocking is something that I've always had success with, but it drops off very quickly. Like I can get a week of, and I'm like, oh my God, I was so productive this week because I time blocked. But then the following week, I'm not religious enough of actually continuing that routine, that pattern, that habit of having really good time blocks and actually making sure those time blocks are the right size. As I said, I always underestimate how long something's going to take. It's really hard to walk away from something if it's not finished for me.
Yeah, for me, there's this phrase in sports that the best ability is availability. And in sports, it's basically like, it doesn't matter how talented of an athlete you are. If you're hurt, you're not going to help the team. Yeah. And I have always used it in my career being like, I've overextended myself because I've been doing content marketing for 15 years. And when you first start out in content marketing, a lot of times what that means is you're doing social media. And if it's a global company, you feel like you always have to be available. And I have exponentially grown in my career in part because I'm available all the time. And it's very hard now as a person who, in theory, I'm supposed to be more strategic and less like in the weeds on stuff. But I've been doing things in the weeds literally for 15 years. And so I'm like, it's so hard to pass those things off and trust.
Yeah. And to your point, both sales and I think marketing as well, in an element of this, it's one of those jobs where the job is never really done if you want to excel at it. There's always something more you can do. If it's in sales, it's activity outbound. If it's in marketing, it's getting on social media, observing things, looking for inspiration, or creating the next big idea that you have, or coming up with ideas. It's never really done. So you need to decide the limits of where that is. Otherwise, you will just work all the time. And then, as you said, you don't do good work when you're totally burnt. And recognizing that is part of the process of realizing, okay, I need to protect my time. I need to say yes to the stuff that's actually going to do the most for us.
So to that point, I told you before we started recording, I was thinking about this conversation last night, which is indicative of the conversation we were just having about, I was like, you know who I really adore? That Will Aitken of willaitken.com. He's a really great guy. But no, I wanted to ask you about kind of like refilling your cup from a creativity standpoint, because you're right. Again, working in content, a perfect example of this is, as we speak on May 9th, we are getting ready to roll out this AI report, which is our huge the Q2 pillar piece that will drive organic traffic and hopefully a lot of demand gen, as one of our demand gen people is hanging out as the producer on this podcast episode now. But I'm thinking through this. We're just getting it into design to then put out into the world. And I'm already starting to think about the survey we're going to run that will turn into our Q3 piece. And it's always that next thing. And then in the meantime, I'm also trying to think of like, okay, well, what's the daily shorts we can put out and TikToks, and what can I put on LinkedIn this afternoon so that we keep driving traffic? And I have never found a way to fix my burnout other than like I work until I get burnt out and then I go to Mexico or Scotland for a week, whatever it is. Like for you, how, especially now with working for yourself and also like representing so many different brands and needing to create content for all these different places, how do you refill your cup from a creativity standpoint? Like what helps you do that?
People. I think talking with people. Actually, and this is why when I first started working for Vidyard's media brand sales feed, which I'm now co-founder of or co-owner of, technically didn't found it. It's a long story, but there was this team of people who I could always rely on to bounce ideas off or get excited or share energy with. And now I'm working a lot on my own. It's a case of finding people who I can work with around me. So whether that be peers, I have a lot of online fake beef with Janelle and Knuth, but we probably talk twice a week, and those conversations really fill my cup a lot, and make me feel less alone in it. And sometimes you can get this gut feel and this instinct for what's going to work and what's going to be good, but it's hard to trust that always, and you can sometimes pursue an idea that's just going to turn out rubbish. So sometimes just talking to someone, having someone to bounce ideas off is really helpful for me. The second thing is consuming. I don't get ideas editing videos. I get ideas consuming new content, whether that's something on LinkedIn, something on TikTok, something on YouTube. And it's not always, all the content I make is B2B sales related, but the content that inspires me that I consume rarely is. The stuff that really inspires me is the stuff that I enjoy and seek out on my own. And just consuming things gives me new ideas, new perspectives. Even if that perspective isn't one that I share, it can give me a reason to think about it. So from reading books to watching YouTube videos in my downtime to scrolling the feed, and this is where I try to do that as intentionally as possible to make sure it's not a total time sink. That's where I get a lot of my creativity from. And if I don't do that in a while, that's where I start to feel a little bit burnt out in terms of like, I've got no ideas left. So being intentional about how I consume content and talking to people is the short answer.
do you give yourself like a cutoff of any sort? I'm asking because I think I might have told someone else this, but like my fiance is also in B2B startup marketing. She does demand gen for a cybersecurity company. And like we almost jokingly have to, we're like, it gets to a certain point after dinner where we're like, okay, no more open rate conversations, no more headline discussions. Like we have to watch the Great British Baking Show in Zona, whatever it is. Like, do you give yourself a cutoff, or especially now working for yourself and doing your own thing? Is it kind of 24/7 always on? This is more like therapeutic for me than for the podcast I'm finding at this moment.
I'd love to tell you that I stopped thinking about it sometimes, but I'm always kind of thinking about it somewhere in my mind. I've got to the point where my wife doesn't work in demand gen, but she's so sick and tired of hearing about me and my content that we don't talk about it. And to be honest, when she talks about accounting, it bores the crap out of me as well. So we find other things to talk about, and that's a good release. I also have 2 kids, and frankly, 4-year-olds don't really care about the best cold call opener. So yeah, I know, right? Little slacker. He's not going to President's Club. No way. But you know, playing with him and just doing stuff like that, it's knowing when I should be thinking about it, when I shouldn't, and drawing those lines. There's also only so much I can do. That said, there are times on the weekend where I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a great idea, or I'm thinking about something, or I'm checking the emails, and it's something that's ongoing. I don't think you can just suddenly say one day I'm going to set boundaries and those boundaries magically appear. It's something that you learn over time. Okay, I need these boundaries. How am I going to work on them one bit at a time? Whether it be at 5 o'clock, I'm done. And that's really hard, especially as a founder, you know? It's really hard when there's still work left to be done. At 5 o'clock, I'm done. And on those days, I sometimes go, okay, you know what? I'm going to finish at 5, hang out with my kids, have dinner, sit down with my wife, watch TV. She goes to bed at like 9:30, and I'm going to go an hour and a half to catch up after that. And that doesn't sound that healthy, but it is healthier than me spending that entire 5 hours kind of working, kind of doing something, and not giving those people who I care about 100% of myself.
Yeah. I think what you just described is as healthy as you can, especially in like tech and like that. I feel like that is, if I was to describe my days to my parents, and I do sometimes, they'd be like, oh my God, you're working till 10 o'clock. I'm like, well, there's a run in there and there's a dinner in there, but yes, yes, I am. But I'm also just now thinking about one of my nieces or nephews calling and asking if I have 25 seconds to talk about Bluey or something. And yes, I do. 100%.
Hello, it's Archie here. Dada, do you have 25 seconds to help me build Legos? I'm like, yeah.
Yes, no. I do.
Send me an email about this, buddy. Bye.
Yeah. I'll follow up. I promise. I'll open it.